Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Horror. This is episode 22, Revelations, the Spark of Life. This is going to be a very difficult episode, and I knew it was going to be a very difficult episode because there really is no basis for Revelations. Revelations is in essence a fractured universe, bits and pieces from other worlds put together into one gigantic map. And while there's no fractured universe or area of the world where it's all fractured and haunted, so there's really nowhere in the universe or known universe where we can go to and know and there can be some kind of basis for this map. I can't cover a haunted house, I can't cover that kind of stuff because quite honestly there isn't anything even in the range of what is possible because of this map. So it was pretty hard to find anything grounded in reality. However, even though there wasn't any place really in the world that really showed us anything similar to this, there is something that I found that was very interesting that actually might have inspired the whole story here of Revelations, maybe even more of Black Ops 3, and it's a game and it's actually based off the Call of Cthulhu mythos. So for you guys that don't know, Call of Cthulhu has been a huge theme within Black Ops 3 Zombies. It was first shown in Shadows of Evil, and for you guys that don't know what Cthulhu is, it's basically like this weird octopus squid looking creature that has tentacles coming down its mouth. And we've already covered this. I've made several videos on Cthulhu and how it has inspired plenty of things within Black Ops 3 Zombies, more specifically or more prevalent within the Shadows of Evil map. Now, the Cthulhu mythos is something that has been expanded upon quite a bit. It started off as something that H.P. Lovecraft made himself, and then it expanded into other people working, doing games, spinning off, doing more with the Cthulhu universe. So as I was doing research, just trying to find out, well, what exactly is this based off, and Revelations, anything I could find. It took a lot of time. I finally found this game, and it's based within the Call of Cthulhu's mythos. Now, it's not a regular game. I believe it's like a board game. I'm not exactly sure what it is. It's like one of those adventure games where you just kind of go through the adventure, and it's called A Little Thing. Now, it's actually very, very detailed. This was something that was copyrighted back in 2005, so this was before Black Ops 3, hell, before a lot of the Call of Duty games. And it's very interesting because some of the stuff mentioned in here you can actually see on Revelations, which is very, very cool. So if you guys want to read this, it's a very, very long read, but it essentially explains the story. So if you guys want to check it out, I will link it down in the description below, but I'm going to give you guys as quick of a summary as I can and explain a little bit about this story. Hopefully you guys do go on to enjoy the video. Make sure you guys drop a like on the video, guys. It does help out. I spent a lot of time on this episode because it's a little bit harder than the others, so if you guys could smash a like, it would be highly appreciated. And if you are new, if you enjoy the content like this, I'm going to have a lot more episodes of Behind the Horror, going to be spinning off into other games here in the future, so make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss those. But anyways, let's go ahead and talk about A Little Thing. So Little Thing, as I've already mentioned, is a game that was created within the Call of Cthulhu mythos. And this story is very, very interesting because it actually follows a group of investigators as they're trying to recover a cylinder of life. It's a special cylinder that allows you to protect your spark of life, which is what they're calling the energy. So they're pretty much, in essence, they're trying to protect your soul, I guess you could say, but they're calling it the spark of life in this case, which is the energy that we have within us, or life energy is what they refer to it. And when you gather your life energy and you kind of put it together, you're able to protect it in a spark of life, which is within this cylinder that essentially extends your life. So even if you do die, your spark of life remains on, and then in the future you would be able to harness this spark of life and put it within a vessel. So in this case, you could put it within another body and you essentially live forever. So our four investigators actually try to find or recover this special cylinder after they're being directed by a keeper who is known as Mr. Gray. So Mr. Gray, who is very similar to, in this case, I want to say a combination of Dr. Monty and then also the Shadow Man, because as we all know, the Shadow Man, Dr. Monty have very similar appearances. They both have like the old style kind of hat, like the 1920s hat, and they look very similar. So in this case, Mr. Gray reminds me of that because even within this reading, if you guys again want to check it out, it mentions that this guy is an older gentleman who has a 1920s style hat, and he's like very cultured, very sophisticated, and this just outright reminded me, hey, this has to be what inspired Dr. Monty, and also the Shadow Man. So just kind of backtracking a little bit here, explaining a little bit about the story, because as we all know, at this point, these 4 investigators are trying to locate where exactly this vessel or this special cylinder is at. And it's very interesting because the story, how it originates to this, reminds me a lot of Dr. Max's and how they had to recover his brain. It's very, very interesting. So basically the story goes on that John Belton, who is a very scholastic philosopher, developed a theory that the life energy of a creature, which he referred to as a spark, could move from metal or wood and could be easily moved around. So you can move your spark of life from your body to a just regular inanimate object. And we do also see this within Revelations. As we all know, there was that one spark that you find right at the beginning of the match that's located on the truck. So it could honestly be on there as well. And this spark, which we were trying to figure out what it was for the longest time, in the end we found out that it was in order to be able to unlock Takeyao's katana. And in this case, they were saying in this story that this spark of life could be kind of put onto a piece of wood, a sheet of metal, so your spark of life can exist outside of the body. So after a while, John Belton actually ends up dying and all his theories are kind of left behind. We move on forward, and a Englishman by the name of Harold Gresham was actually working on a theory about the life energy as well when he discovered Belton's work. Now this guy was someone who just was afraid of death. He didn't want to die, so he was very, very interested in this ability to be able to preserve his existence and be able to move essentially from vessel to vessel and preserve his life. So through his research, he was able to find Belton's work, which was based on mythos and alien science, which again is another big theme in zombies. There's actually theories going around that some of these items that we've seen are actually of alien origins, which is very, very cool. So after this, Gresham actually ended up conducting a ton of experiments. He started using the prototypes from what he saw from Belton's schematics and his research, and he started to build a ton of batteries in order to try to store people's energy or their spark. So he was trying to do these tests to figure out if this was in fact possible. So he ended up actually creating a ton of different houses that were structured and created solely for the purpose of preserving people's life, and he would actually end up bringing a ton of people to these houses and killing them so that he could see if he could be able to preserve their spark of life. So he started to commit a ton of murders. At this time as well, the outbreak of World War II started, and after a ton of bombings, all of the houses that he had constructed, only one was actually left. Now, because of all of these murders and disappearances, the authorities were actually able to catch on to this, and Gresham was actually captured and put in prison. So the next person to try to take up this mantle was actually not someone who was very smart. His name was actually Joseph Rayz. He was an inventor, but he was someone who wasn't very intellectual. He wasn't a very scientific person, but what he was a very good person at investigating. So Rayz, after doing a ton of research and doing a ton of traveling, was actually able to find a Mego brain cylinder, which this just shouts out to me Dr. Max's. Now, because he was able to find this Mego brain cylinder, he was able to kind of hold this brain or this person as prisoner. And because he wasn't very scientific or a very good inventor, he started to force this Mego brain to essentially come up with ideas, and he would then start to patent these ideas and sell them and start to get money. So his plan was to sell enough of these inventions and patents and products so he would have enough money to eventually start working as well on this special battery, if you want to call it, that would preserve his spark of life, because he felt that he would be dying very, very soon. So after a while, he's getting old. He knows that he's starting to, get weaker, and he needs to be able to preserve his spark of life. And he's already sold enough of these patents and ideas from this captured Mego brain that he starts to kind of force the Mego brain to start making very, very crude and very early designs of this battery that would harness his energy and save him. He ends up using the money to buy a big plot of land. He ends up building this house, and it costed a ton of money to build this house, which would then have the architecture or the structure built completely around the fact that he would be able to kind of siphon off the energy of anyone who lived within this house and would be able to preserve his own spark of life. So fast forward, Joseph Rayz ends up dying. His spark of life is actually saved within this battery or this cylinder, which reminds me of the summoning key, which to me it just screams out summoning key. And so basically Joseph Rayz ends up dying. His spark of life goes into the battery. He's able to stay there, and his house that he built on this plot of land ends up being rented out to people. And as these people start living in there, he starts to siphon off their energy in order to be able to sustain himself. So if he doesn't get that energy, his spark of life will end up kind of dying down and he'll eventually perish. But if he has people in there renting out the house, he's able to kind of siphon off their energy, and because of that, extend his own life. After a while, after this is happening, this is when the investigators are able to come in. They discover this house. They find out the whole secret underground basement area where Joseph Rayz's spark of life is located, along with the Nego brain, and they're able to defeat Joseph Rayz, recover the cylinder, and then they have one of two options, which is keep the cylinder for themselves and see if they can do anything with it, or two, give it to Mr. Gray, who would reward them with money or anything else that they wanted. So it's pretty interesting. It is very similar to the entire storyline. Obviously this is not exactly, but it's still pretty interesting. The spark of life is something we saw in Revelations, a little spark, and I just think that it's pretty cool that there's a lot of things that were very similar with the Call of Duty Zombies storyline. So anyways, hopefully you guys did enjoy this episode of Behind the Horror. If you did, make sure you guys drop a like and a favorite on the video. Comment down below what you guys thought of the backstory for this. And if you guys want to, make sure you guys subscribe if you are new and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single upload. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Follow me on Twitter. It's the best place to talk. It's honestly the best place. And if you guys want to, check out my gaming channel, link down below. I'll see you guys next time. I'm out. Peace.